to have a second webinar on labor history and race, focus around, where does the labor movement been in key moments, and connect a little bit to where we are today with COVID-19. And on Friday, you're and Sally Alvarez is going to lead that discussion. You get to see her tomorrow. And on Friday, we're going to spend 2 hours talking about globalization in the global economy, and also how we got here in many ways. So that you will spend some time with me on Friday. So those are the 3 webinars that we're going to spend together, and that will build us up to hopefully give us some key concepts for when we get back together sometime in the fall, which we're going to leave some space at the end to discuss with you. Yeah. Okay. So before we get started, I know we all know a little bit about Zoom because we've been doing this for the past month, but I'm going to let Cherie go over some of the Zoom instructions, and so that we all know what we're working with. And just to introduce, Kim Cook is going to be leading today. So Kim, everybody knows you, but we have Jeff joining us as an observer. Jeff, he's here. And we have Jean Carroll, who's back, who's feeling much better and has been talking to you. And we have Linda Donahue, who is a Worker Institute member of our staff from upstate New York, and she's going to be observing our session. And then we have Cherie and Christine, and they'll introduce themselves. Cherie, take it away.
Hello. Glad to see everybody. Good morning to all. So I've been tasked with going over the Zoom that we're going through today. So the first thing that I need to tell you is that what I'm going to go over, it seems that everybody already knows what they're doing, but what the view that I'm going through is for laptops and computers. If you're on a cell phone, it might be slightly different. Icons might be a little different. The first thing I also need to say is we are being recorded. These sessions will all be recorded. So just wanted to let you know that by law, we need to let you know that. Okay, the first function that I wanted to go through is the mute button, which is on the left bottom side of the bottom of the screen. It's like a microphone. Click that to mute and unmute. We ask that everybody stay muted so that you don't get background noise. I live by a train, so you'll be hearing that every now and again, hopefully not now. Also, the next button after that is the view button, video, which shows your face. There's a few people who are not on video right now. If we could see your faces, that would be great. This is also how we like to take attendance. We also like if everyone could put their names on their view, which I see everybody has, so thank you very much for that. The last one, the next one we have is which is for cell phones. I think you don't have the gallery, which the gallery has everyone on one screen, and whoever's talking, your box is highlighted. If you have speaker view, the speaker is like huge on your screen, and we get smaller around your screen, the view. Again, I don't think cell phones have galleries. Participant tab is going to be on the bottom. It has an icon of 2 people. If you click on that, you will see a panel come up that has everyone's name on it, everybody who's on this call. It also has the status of your mute and video. Again, if we can make sure that you're on mute so we don't hear any background noise, then we ask you to unmute when you're speaking. And hopefully everyone will speak at least one time. The next in that same, this is also where you change your name, but again, everybody knows, has already had their name changed. There's also a list of buttons on the bottom, a list of reactions, like it says hand up, yes, no. If everybody could just to let me know that, give me a hands up so I can. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
And then there's a yes, no button as well in the chat function.
You can hear me, Sherry?
I can.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out where his button is. Okay, I see reaction. Where it says reaction?
Nope. What are you asking exactly?
On the bottom of my screen, I have reaction
tab that has a hand and a thumbs up.
Okay.
And then also in your participant views, there's also buttons that say yes, no, go faster, and those type of things.
Oh, got you. Okay.
Check a yes. Can everybody give me a yes just to check the button?
Can you hear me, Miss Cherie?
I can.
Good morning.
Good morning, Iris.
Okay.
Everybody can give me a check, or a few people can give me a yes or a no, just so I know. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sheree, can I just suggest that we mark this moment, how excited we all are to have Robert back?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey. Mwah, love y'all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It is wonderful to have you back, my friends.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Robert.
Hey.
Made it through, man.
Mwah.
My man, two hands, baby.
Hey.
Two hands.
Good to have you back. Thank you.
Yeah. Good to be back.
Yeah, I'm glad you can be back.
Yes.
So those are our reactions. Thank you all. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to go through is the chat tab. It's at the bottom, it's a chat box. The icon is a chat box. This is where we're going to put our questions. We could talk to the group. You'll see it says to everybody or privately. Talk to everybody, or you can send individual messages. This is also where we ask you to put any questions while the presentation goes on. This, when Kim has a break in the presentation, she'll go to questions and answer any questions. Those questions there, that would be great. And that wraps up the functions that I have. Now, what I do want to let you know, we will be going to breakout rooms soon. And there are a couple of things about breakout rooms. The breakout rooms, when you're in your groups of 4 or 5, the chat rooms don't work very well. So I believe you could talk to each other, but not to the whole group. Also, we ask that when I put you in the breakout room, you have to join the group, so you have to agree to join. The breakout rooms will also be pre-timed, so you'll have a certain amount of time. We'll give you a 2-minute warning when you're about to end, and it will automatically go back into the larger group. And that, my friends, wraps up my introduction. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Derek.
So just a helpful hint, people with the cell phones and the tablet,
Yeah.
if they swipe across their screen, they'll move to galleries of 4 outside of everybody that's on a laptop that has a larger multi-gallery.
Okay, so if you swipe, you can see the rest of us.
Yes.
Great. So there you go. Thank you, Derek.
No problem. I became a
And
Zoom
also,
expert.
I just wanted to let you know, so I'm going to put Christine Hess is going to be our IT. Should you should you have issues get kicked off and you're having problems getting back in, if you can give her a text, and I'm going to put her number in the group chat here give me a moment. And you can give her a call, as I'll be having to work with the breakout rooms in the back. So there you go, Christine Hess. That's her cell phone number. If you get kicked off for any reason, if you could jot that down right quick, or if you're having any serious problems hearing or anything like that, if you give her a text, she'll try to help you out. And that, my friends, wraps up my Zoom overview. I hope you're all helpful. It was helpful to you. And I'll give it to Kim.
Sorry to interrupt. Hi, this is Claudia Zamora. Nice to see everybody. I don't see the reaction tabs, and I wonder if it's because we have a different version of Zoom. Mine is not the updated version, so maybe not everybody has the same options.
Okay, but do you have the reactions like the clap and the thumb?
Nope, I don't see any of that.
Do you have anything that says yes or no?
Nope.
A button, is there somewhere like that says more?
No, I think I'm using an older version, so I need to update it.
Okay.
But I just mentioned it because maybe other people are in the same situation.
Okay, thank you. So in that case, when we do ask a question, provide your response on the note in the chat.
Okay, sounds good.
For
Thank you.
anybody else who has that same concern, if you don't have any of the functions for whatever reason, if you could respond by a chat, because we want everybody to participate.
Yes. Thank you, Jerry, for explaining how to engage in this session, and in a moment to try to recreate a little bit of an opening space where we all get to talk to each other. We're going to go into the breakout rooms, and talk a little bit and reconnect. And I want you, we're gonna get into small groups of 4, and just want you guys to check in and have an opportunity to talk about how you're feeling now and this moment, and you know, what you're bringing into this group today. So I'm going to, you're gonna have 10 minutes for that discussion. We will not have time to report back to the whole group, just because otherwise we won't be able to get to the lesson. But I did wanted to give you some space for us to reconnect in smaller groups, we, you know, so that we can begin this session as the community that we are, as a community of leaders that we are, and begin from a place of experience and from a place of love and community. So we're gonna have 10 minutes. Cherie, if you can do the breakout rooms. It says that we were debating how much time to give you. I know we could talk for an hour, but just wanted to give you a little taste of reconnecting and having the opportunity to just catch up in smaller groups. But we have a lot to cover, and we just wanna get into the discussion right away. So I'm gonna turn it over to Kim Cook, who's going to be your main faculty for this session, and we will have different exercises. So we're gonna get to speak some more. But Kim, why don't you get started on the session? And thank you everyone for being here. We have 30 participants. We'll let you know who didn't make it at the end so that you are aware, but I know that things happen. So we're excited all of you are here. Thank you. Kim?
Thanks, Patricia, and hi everybody, and welcome back to ULI. I am glad, I'm so happy to see you all. It feels like a very different day than the last time we all came together. And let me ask you all, if you're not muted, would you please mute during this discussion, because sometimes stuff comes up and we can't hear it. Thanks. You know, the last time we met, I was so humbled by your stories of what you all are dealing with. And it was just really amazing to me. And it was sad and painful. And I really hope that today we're entering sort of a new phase of this, and we'll be talking about that. But we are clearly in a crisis that none of us have ever known. I'm leading this discussion today because, you know, as you know, I was a president of a local for a very long time, a local union. And, you know, I felt like over those years, it always felt like it was like one crisis after another, right? One thing after another. Of course, none of those crises compared with what you all have been dealing with the last couple of months. But, you know, it was things like, you know, layoffs and staff meltdowns and lost elections and right-wing attacks, and it just felt like one thing after another. And I feel like, you know, I learned something from those experiences, and let's hope that we all do learn from these experiences and take them forward. But most importantly, I really just wanted to have a chance to engage with all of you on this question of what we do moving forward, like how do we come out of this and what are we building? So we're going to focus on two things this morning. One is on your leadership and sort of best practices for leading in a crisis. And then second, we're going to ask you to talk about your organizations. What are you learning about your organizations? And hopefully we will think concretely about how to build something positive out of this misery and bring hope and optimism about the future to this reality. So I'm going to start, I'm going to pull up my little PowerPoint. We're going to try PowerPoint. We are still, by the way, you all know, just learning the technology. We apologize for one problem after the other here. But I'm going to try to share my PowerPoint. Let's see if it works. Do you see it?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
You see part of it. You don't see the right thing. There we go. All right. This is the title of today's discussion, Leading Organizational Change in Times of Crisis. I want to start with this question of the dialectic of crisis that I know you all have heard probably in ULI and other places, that in every crisis, there are dangers and there are opportunities. And being able to see the opportunities for your organization depends on the kind of leadership that you can muster, right? in the middle of this. So we're going to talk a lot about opportunity today. Now, I gave you all an article to read before this. Did anybody read it? Raise your hand. Let me see, for those of you I can see who actually read it. Okay, some of you read it. It was an article in the New York Times by James Bowie. It was short, but I loved his last paragraph, which was, the militancy born of immediate self-protection and self-interest can grow into calls for deeper, broader transformation. And if the United States continues to stumble its way into yet another generation-defining economic catastrophe, we may find that even more of its working class comes to understand itself as an agent of change and action. I really feel like he is sort of the voice that we've heard, you know, in a lot of places now, of the opportunity that this sort of crisis presents for change, for the working class, really understanding that it's time to take action and not let what has happened to us and the world we've built continue in its current form. We really want to think about this big question, right? Is there hope, and will there be meaningful long-term change? But I want to start with this question of your own leadership before we really talk about big opportunities. And I'll go back to that. Last week, I was on a leadership meeting with a group of union leaders, and one of the women from OPIU, in fact, said this. She said, I don't want to experience a life-changing event without changing. I thought that that was a powerful statement. I don't want to experience a life-changing event without changing. And she went on to talk about what that meant for her as a leader and the changes that she felt will happen or need to happen as a result of this for her personally, but I think she was also talking about her own organization. But let's talk about your leadership in times of crisis. And what I did is I created a list of about 8 leadership practices in the midst of a crisis that are sort of good advice and good practices that I'm going to share with you now. And they are, in fact, drawn from a number of different articles, so there's no one author I can point you to. But they're drawn from a number of different articles on nonprofit crisis management with a lens on labor. And before I say them, I want to say these are really important skills for any leader at any time. Of course, you'll recognize them, you know these things, but oftentimes in a crisis, we forget. We are in the middle of a crisis, right? We are just responding and freaking out. And now more than ever, it's important to remember these things and to be intentional about them. So let me walk through this list of best practices. The first one is to be values driven, to remember what's important and why, right? And to really go back to the vision statements you wrote last summer and the values that they were based on. What do we really care about in our organization, and what's the vision that we want to create for the future? And more importantly, what is the current moment? How does the current moment impact our values and our vision? So keeping those front and center is the first practice. The second practice is to learn and adapt. Leaders deal with uncertainty and ambiguity all of the time, but never as much as we do in a crisis, right? We all can say right now, we have no idea what tomorrow is going to be like, let alone next month or 6 months from now. There's so much uncertainty. So you need a plan. You need not just a plan A, you need a plan B and a plan C, right? And frankly, let's just be clear. We will make mistakes as leaders, and we need to own those, and we need to learn from those. And we need to take that opportunity to adapt and to try something different. People are going to suffer in this crisis, but you're going to have to do the absolute best that you can, and you're going to have the opportunity, hopefully, to come out, your organizations to come out stronger and more resilient. So the second is learn and adapt. The third is another one that we all know. We need to build and rely on teams, again, more than ever. People say that the natural inclination often in a crisis is for a leader to go into command and control mode, which is like, I just need to take control of this. I need to send out what to do. I need to tell everybody what to do. But it's really not, that's not really leadership, right? Leadership is creating a culture of people around you, with you, who work with you, observing and perceiving what's going on and adding to the collective response and thinking. Even more than in non-crisis times, I want you to delegate, consult with others, give people latitude to solve problems and come up with solutions. And an organization that depends solely on senior managers to deal with these crises and these challenges risks failure. You need other people's help. So really, really relying on and building teams. I want to just I liked this one a lot when I saw it, put politics aside. I'm sure you're all in organizations that have no politics, you know, inside of them, right? There's none of that happens. But if there is no better moment than to try to overcome that and put that aside, right? Appeal to your internal opponents to come together in this moment. It's all hands on deck in a crisis. It's important to focus on the real goals and the real challenges and opponents. And you need to listen, maybe for the first time, to people you really disagree with and bring them in to the crisis management team. The fifth practice is be creative and try new things. It really relates to the learn and adapt. Don't hold on to practices that aren't useful anymore. Our organizations already often have trouble changing, right, and trying new things. We struggle with changing to keep up with society in the workplace. But we have to think of new ways that our organization might operate given this new reality that reflect our values. Tomorrow could look very different than yesterday. Next month could look different than today. We need to be creative and try new things. The next one, of course, is communicate clearly and constantly, right? Can't communicate too much. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Admit when you don't know something and find out, right? Your greatest asset is building trust with those around you, and communicating and being honest are the ways to build trust. Level with people and be transparent, perhaps even more than you normally are. The seventh practice is, I wrote, is practice radical trust and empathy. I have a good friend who does organizational development, and she talks about radical trust. I think we all know how important trust is when you're leading, but even more so than in regular times, a crisis requires trust. If you're supervising people who are at their homes, you cannot be with them every second. You are going to have to absolutely both understand trust in a radical way, trust people in a radical way, and empathize, right? Because here's the thing, we know that other situations and limitations may be different than our own. People have different levels of crisis in their lives right now. They're dealing with different things, children, family, illness, all of the things that are happening in this crisis. And they have different levels of resources to deal with them. So meet people where they are. Their most basic needs have to be met before they can feel safe and trust you. So practice radical trust and empathy. And the last one is this one, project optimism about the future. Even if you don't feel it, right? Even if you haven't found it yet, find it. You can't motivate others with dismal hopelessness. You have to, your job as a leader is to lead people forward, not whine about the present. So check yourself on that. If you can't project some level of long-term hope, people aren't gonna follow you. The best way is to actually be optimistic when you're part of a team that's moving forward in a righteous fight, no matter how hard it is. So those really are sort of the 8 best practices of leadership in times of crisis. And as I said, I know you know these things, and the question is, how are you doing on each of them, right? If you were to go through the 8 of these things and you were to grade yourself, how do you think you're doing on each of these things? So what we're going to do is send you into small groups, groups of 3, in fact. I think I'm gonna take this off of here, but Christine, you're gonna put this list on to the chat room for me. There you go. And here's what you're going to do in your small groups. You're going to consider these 8 leadership practices in times of crisis, and how, and your own leadership, how you're doing. And I want you to talk about what you think you've learned about yourself and your leadership during this crisis. So we put you in small groups so you have a little more time to really flesh this out with each other, to really reflect on this moment and your own leadership. Okay, so you're going to go into groups of 3. Sheree is going to send you in. When you're in the, this list will be in the chat room if you need it to look at it when you're in your small group. Some of you know this, that if you need Sheree's help, you push the help button when you're in breakouts. And when you come back into the big room, I want to hear some thoughts from some of you about what you have learned about your own leadership. Here they come.
We're gonna have to stop this.
Are they still there? Are they still there?
What happened? Okay, Tamara, you tell them.
Are they still
You're
there?
killing us. We're right in the
No,
middle
they
of
just
an
took it
intense
out.
conversation.
Okay, so you should have never touched your face, anything, until you washed your hands and sanitize the area. So please go do that while we're all here.
Okay, what happened?
A mover just came to, some movers just came into her house to get a piece of furniture.
Yeah.
Or something.
All right, so that's the problem with Zoom. You can see everybody touching their faces, right? You can see it.
Yeah, that's a bad habit.
I know. So, all right, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to ask you to mute. I'm going to ask you to mute again, please. I'm going to ask you to take a second, everybody, and in the chat room, I want you to write a couple of words or a sentence about what you're thinking about, what you've learned about leadership, your own leadership. So if folks could take a minute and write something in the chat room, we're going to capture all of these. What did you talk about in your small group? Write it in the chat room. It's not a long thing because we don't want to read tons of long things. Very brief comment in the chat room.
Kim, can I ask you?
Yeah.
What was number 4?
I can't hear you.
Number 4 on the list of 8. I missed.
Now, number 4 is put politics aside.
Oh, put politics aside. Okay, I just didn't put it. I didn't put it there. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, I'm seeing a lot of great words. Resilience, humbling, command and control has been my default strength.
How do we press enter once we type it in, Kim?
Just press return. Strength and creativity, learning to adapt and be optimistic. All right, social distancing, our mental stability, unity. These are great. Jeanette has her hand raised, is that true? Jeanette?
Yes, I do, because I don't have the typing feature because I'm on an iPad. And I just wanted to share, but you let me know when you're ready.
Oh, iPads don't have typing features, huh? That's
not on Zoom.
Okay. All right. Well then, thank you. Is everybody looking at these chat comments? I'll come back to you, Jeanette, and let you speak here in a second.
Sure.
A team to go through this crisis, challenges, the plus versus minuses. Awesome. Importance of clear communication. The need to build teams and the impact social distancing has had on us on our teams. Absolutely. Transition in times of crisis. Wow. These are amazing, you guys. As they open, I'm in the Finger Lakes region and we meet the criteria to reopen. So John, you're probably reopening soon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we are reopened. We're good for Friday, but that was part of our talk in our chat room today was, are we really ready? I'm like, places might seem that they're ready, but, who's going to be monitoring every single workplace that opens up next week to see that everybody's meeting the criteria that they're supposed to keep everybody safe?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? About who's going to provide that leadership in every workplace. All right, so this is awesome, you guys. I want to hear from a couple of you about sort of what your insights were on your leadership. And I'm going to let Jeanette go first since she's got her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, what I was able to learn about myself was how passionate I was about actually voicing the members' concern with management when we meet on a weekly basis, and making sure that they understood and that they were able to accommodate when necessary. Also bringing to the table of issues that we were working before the crisis, and they were reluctant to open up, such as telecommuting, because they wanted to have this control over the employees. Now they have to do it.
So and you learned about your leadership. You learned
yes.
how assertive you can be about that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Good. Great. Thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
someone else, John Harrington and Trump. What did you, John, what did you and Trump learn about leadership? Has Trump learned anything about leadership?
Sorry, I stepped away from the computer for a second. that is my away screen. Just that, I mean, most importantly, I mean, how important leadership is when, you know, for lack of a better way to say it, the shit hits the fan, right? When everything goes crazy, how important leadership is, and what it revealed in the leadership of DOE. Like all the cracks and crevices in the leadership of DOE were interesting to see, but the weirdest side thing that came out of this was I feel like there is more engagement now than there was before within the union, as far as like the ability to go to a union meeting is so different. So I'm going to Zoom meetings with schools where, you know, almost 90% of the school is there, whereas normally during lunch periods when I'd visit the work site, you know, half of that would show up.
Yeah. That's a great lesson about our organizations moving forward. And let's raise that again later when we talk about organizations.
I may continue to use, like, learn out of this, I'm going to continue to use some of this type of stuff, like Zoom for certain meetings where I know I get better turnouts in different places. Not always, right? But also I don't have to look for a parking spot. Nobody's got to sit in traffic for it.
John, does those learnings say anything to you about your own leadership? What would you say that they've taught you about your own leadership?
I guess, you know, it tested a lot of things, because it tested a lot of your skills that had to come out somewhat naturally, like you weren't even thinking about, but to keep people up, to keep people moving, something like this happens and it knocks everybody down, right? So I feel like part of your role as a leader is to not only be making decisions in the moment and all these things that are going on, but also to keep the spirits up. I work with 40 like building reps, and I need to make sure that I keep them up. Every meeting I go in, I need to make sure that I keep them up. You got to make sure that people are being appreciated through a time where the bosses might not be appreciating them. You know, like, so I think there was a lot during this crisis. There's a lot more like, a lot more taking care of people on an emotional health level, you know, and making sure that they stay engaged with what's going on, because since we're isolated, since we're quarantined, since we're all working remotely, you know, educators anyway, it's very easy to feel disconnected, alone, and isolated. And like I keep telling people in every meeting I have, is my biggest fear is that there is a member sitting at home somewhere, worried, scared, not knowing what's going on, also getting bothered by their boss or something like that, and not reaching out to anybody. And the fact of the matter is, if they don't, there's no just passing the person at the work site.
Right.
And having a conversation, so that mental health, that mental health piece is really important to always keep in mind as a leader through a crisis like this.
Great. Yeah, there's some great comments on here. Is there anyone else who'd like to just share with the whole group your thoughts on this? You can either raise your hand. Don, you got your hand raised. Don, go for it.
Yeah, so during this time, your values really come out. For me personally, in rooms and in circles with other leaders who are at the forefront of your organization, I sometimes lay back, right, and listen to everyone. I haven't been laying back on anything at this time. And it has caused some, so when we look at putting politics aside, I said in our group, for me, it's not so much the people who you don't get along with or don't agree with, even some people who you align yourself with and are and agree with most of the time, you see your differences. And so that has gotten me in a little trouble during this time, but I've had to tell those same leaders that guess what, I support you and we're in this together, but I don't agree with these one or two things. I think we're taking a weak stance on this and we need to be a little bit stronger as an organization. I've also looked at, in my own office, we would schedule staff meetings, but because it's so busy at times, we don't get to really have staff meetings. And so it drags on to, it goes from a weekly to a monthly staff meeting. During this time, we have been consistent with scheduling staff meetings every week. And we have been making sure that we're scheduling those meetings because we want to hear from the receptionist who is taking in phone calls on what's going on out there.
Right.
How can we be better and different things like that as leaders, and then being optimistic about the future. Like everyone else has said, I think it has engaged the members. They are asking questions. They are calling. I'm speaking to, we have a fraction of our members in Local 372 who distance themselves from the union normally. They have called, I have responded. I've been there multiple times with them to answer questions, but I'm also using it as an educational opportunity where I show them where they can find the same information that they're asking me.
Right.
And so that has made them call even more and say, well, you know, I found the information, but can you explain this to me? And I think we're going to be much stronger moving forward.
That's great. Thanks. It's a great segue to the next discussion that we're going to have, Donald. Now, you know, this question of whether members are now more engaged or more appreciative or involved in their union than they were before. If that's true, and if this has made people feel more loyalty and commitment, what do you do with that coming out of this, right? How do you maintain that and keep it up? So thank you all. I hope that you had a chance to glance at the comments, and I hope you had good discussions in your small groups. We are, by the way, going to save all these chats and make them available later on for folks to look at them, and we're going to look at them. But the next part of the discussion really is moving to your organizations, right? What's the change that needs to happen in your organizations coming out of this? And as a local union leader, I often said that there is nothing like a crisis, right, to force us to change in ways that we never did before, right? The urgency of a crisis may create momentum for change that we couldn't muster before. And the best example of that for me in my work, we had a public sector local, were the Supreme Court decisions like Harris v. Quinn, which was the precursor to the Janus decision, right? You know, that decision really made my local, and I think most public unions, move and respond in a way that we never would. And it has changed how we relate to and engage members. We tried new things throughout and kind of continuing to, like member action teams and new benefits and new training programs. You know, the list goes on, am I right? I mean, it really was a crisis that forced us to make a difference. And I know it's not like this crisis, you know, but it's the example that I often use. Now, I want to talk now. I'm going to share my screen again about another article that we use in the National Labor Leadership Initiative about organizational change, and it's called "Leadership in a Permanent Crisis" by Ron Heffitz. Now, I'm going to share my screen and see if I can pull up my PowerPoint, guys. All right, is it there? Can you see it? Okay. Let me see if I can get it to move. There we go. Now you can see it. Leadership in a Permanent Crisis by Ron Heffitz. Now it's an article that I'm actually asked Cherie to post in your ULI files that you all have access to. I'm going to encourage you to read it. It's a really, it's a good article about leading in crisis and organizational change in crisis. It's a little, you know, heavy on the business-focused examples, but I like the ideas, and I think they do apply to unions and our progressive organizations. He describes phases of a crisis that you go through. He says the first phase is the emergency phase, right? That phase where you're just dealing with everybody's immediate needs and crisis, your membership needs, your, you know, trying to figure out how you work differently dramatically in this particular crisis. And you're trying over that time to do the best that you can to fix it for people. And you want to stabilize enough to buy time. Basically, you're buying time to look for a long-term solution, right? It's what we're doing, of course, now as we're trying to buy time till we get to a vaccine in the bigger picture. But then he says there really is a second phase, an adaptive phase. And that's the phase where you start thinking about the underlying issues or underlying in an organization. So what were the underlying weaknesses or problems in our organization? And how do we build capacity to thrive in this new reality? Most of the time, those things are not obvious, right? We have to be creative. We have to figure out the way forward and their twists and turns. Does this ring true for folks at all? I mean, do you feel like you're in a phase 1 or a phase 2? How many people think you're still in phase 1? Let me see some fingers. I wanted to do a poll here, but I forgot to do a poll. Raise a 1 or a 2 if you think your organization is in phase 1 or phase 2. Let me look and see what I'm getting from you guys. Phase 2, we got some 2s, you got some 1s still. All right, let me see. Let me see some more fingers. What do you guys think you are? 1 or 2? Vincent, okay, all right, good. That's helpful, you guys, thank you. So this strikes me that what we really, last time when we met, it's clear we were all in phase 1, right? We were in the beginning of this emergency crisis like none of us had ever seen before. And what we're hoping is that we're moving into phase 2, where we're really starting to learn some lessons and think about the future. So I want to recommend this article to you because he actually talks about these phases, but he also talks about a lot of other suggestions, some of which you all have talked about in ULI, like he talks about distributing leadership responsibility in a crisis, talks about courageous conversations. You all have been through that discussion. He talks about leveraging diversity and listening to people unlike yourself. And he talks about being both optimistic and realistic at the same time. So I'm going to encourage you all as you move forward and thinking about where your organization is headed to go take a look and read this article. And especially as you begin to think about what are the needs of my organization going forward and what's my leadership project going to look like, okay? So this article is posted in the ULI files. But now we're going to ask you to do another set of conversations, but this time you're going to do it with your peer coach, okay? Let me go back. That's oh, I know. Before we do that, I'm going to ask you to remember last summer when you were asked to write a vision statement. You guys remember that? A vision statement, and here's the definition of a vision statement, right? Whoops. It's basically, to have a vision of the future. Whoops, I want to see if I can go back. Oh, there we go. To create and articulate a compelling picture of your desired future. And you all did that. You did that well last summer, and I want you to try to remember that a bit. When you developed your vision statements, you based them on your values. You defined the why we do what we do. You developed a vision statement on what's the desired future that you want for your organization, and you started to think about the action plan. How do we get there? And so what we're going to ask you to do is to revisit that thinking and imagine what's changed now in this new reality. Is there something about your vision and how you get there that has to be adapted to this new reality? Would the path be different than it was 4 or 5 or 6 months ago? And again, we hope that in this conversation that you're going to have in your peer teams, that you can bring hope and optimism and visionary leadership to this discussion. So I am going to send you into peer coaching. We're going to put you with your peer coach. If your peer coach isn't here, we put you with other people. Take turns one at a time. One of you is a peer coach, one talks. You guys remember these skills, right? You're the peer coach. You do deep listening. You ask a lot of probing questions. You share awareness of what you're hearing. You're trying to avoid giving advice, and you're trying to help people imagine options, right? For the future. And here's the questions that you're going to walk through with your peer coach. What have you learned about your organization during this crisis? And what do you think your organization should do coming out of this pandemic to recover and strengthen? So I'm gonna ask you to go into your peer groups and talk about these two things. And they've been added to the chat room by, I'm gonna go to this, by Christine. So they should, yeah, they're in the chat room. Those two things. You have 20 minutes for this discussion. So each of you has 10, and really try to practice your best peer coaching in this discussion, okay? Welcome back, everybody.
Thank you.
I hope you had good discussions. Before we do anything, I want to make sure that Shakira and Emily get to say hello. If everybody else could mute, I want Shakira and Emily to say hello. They got on late. Shakira, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Hi, I'm right here.
Hi, Kira.
Hi, everybody.
Yay.
I'm swinging on my bus. Robert, I love you, Robert.
Love you too, baby. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank
look
you.
amazing. I'm swinging on my bus. They let me keep my bus.
Yes, you look very strong, Robert.
Thank you.
Hi, Vinny.
CWU.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay.
Yeah, Robert. Good to see you. Shakira.
All right, Emily, how about you? Unmute so you can say hello. You got it.
Kira, pull that mask up so it's over your nose.
No, I'm by myself.
Oh, okay.
I'm by myself.
Oh, okay.
Emily, are you feeling better?
I am, thank you. Yeah, I've been good for a while. I was under the weather for like 3 weeks, but not bad. It's great to see you all. I'm glad folks are doing better and keeping.
Hi, Emily.
Hey.
Hey.
Great to see your faces.
Yeah, great to hear everybody, for me at least.
It's great. Maybe we need to do one of these where you just all talk to each other in the whole group for an hour. You know?
That'd be good. That'd be good.
I know. All right. So if everybody would mute for a second. First, I want to just ask, how did you do as a peer coach? Were you using your peer? Think about this issue and not giving them advice. Oh, am I mute? Everybody, do you guys know the reactions button? Go to the reactions button and give me a thumbs up if you feel like you did a good job as a peer coach. Were you really aware of the peer coaching skills again? Great, good, good. I see lots of thumbs up. All right, you guys, I don't see some. That much mean you think you got some work to do.
Damn it, Tamara, where's my thumbs up?
All right, so here's what I want you to do like you did last time. It was very helpful. I want you to go to the chat room and I want you to write something about what you said. What did you say about the future of your organization? Or what do you think needs to happen in your organization going forward to build a stronger union, more resilient union? So go to the chat and write a sentence about what you said in your peer group about this question of the future. And let's follow these. Use digital organizing. Right. Technology needs to improve, okay. Unity, right? Coalition building, I like that. Some people are so much still in the crisis, yeah. More engagement with members, continue to inform our members, stay strong, keep fighting. Close some holes. Lee, I'd love to hear about that. Unity. Sources of funding to compensate for reductions. Okay, Emily, that's interesting. Stay flexible. One union, putting politics aside. Not to our members. Communicate more with members. Sean. Create new pandemic relief plans. Okay. Crisis is an opportunity to make change, Claudia. All right. Those are great. Chuck said CSA has increased member engagement dramatically. That's good news. Reset and mobilize safety and response, maintaining survival. Create new relationships and build on them. All right, those are great. And I trust that you had some good discussions about this. I'm going to save this chat again. So I'm going to ask if there's anybody who's willing to say a little bit more about your thoughts about the future of your organization with this group. Is there, and you guys can either raise your hand in the on the participant list, or
Latrice has her hand up.
Latrice has her hand up. Okay, Latrice, go for it.
Anybody else?
Well, in my conversation with Tracy, I was speaking to him and I was saying how, you know, the UFT is kind of unique in terms of our ability to reach our members. And we have started something like it's called a town hall, and with Michael Mulgrew, and he gets on and it's like maybe 20,000 members.
Wow.
And he speaks about what's going on, the legislation, how we're fighting for the budget, and, you know, in terms of opening schools and so on and so forth. And it just cuts down on a lot of the misinformation, and it kind of makes members a little more comfortable about what's going on, because we monitor social media and we see what the members are saying in their chat groups and whatever. And there's so much misinformation going on. And, you know, it's easier to just reach out for us. I'm not saying for everybody, to have a town hall where you have 20,000 members on. And then after the town hall, you go back and you monitor those sites. And then you see how the members start correcting each other and saying, I was on the town hall and this is what's happening and this is what's taking place. So I think as a union, we have to always inform our members of what is going on, keep them informed. We have our own communications department. So it's like sometimes it's too much for us because we get every communication, whether it's a teacher or OT or nurse. So we get it all, but we have the ability to just send it to the nurses or send it to the OT. So we're getting, you know, the information. We see the value in just keeping members informed as the process is taking place, as opposed to just working, and then letting members know what the outcome is.
So you're learning about sort of the communication process moving forward, how to use these town halls in the future. Okay, right. That's awesome. Great. Anybody else? Robert, is that your hand up?
Donald was next.
Who?
Donald Nesbitt. Donald.
Donald.
Yeah, so in our group, we spoke of the technology moving forward. What we realized right away is that our technology like Hustle is an effective tool, Zoom is an effective tool. So all of these technologies, what we said is that we don't need to stop it once this pandemic is over, because what we're seeing is other members that normally wouldn't come into a general membership meeting were on the town hall meeting. As Latrice said, there were a lot of members who wouldn't travel to come to a meeting, but they were on the Zoom meeting. So we don't need to stop those. We also spoke of the need to engage younger members within the organization, because all of these technologies, they are aware of how to work them and what works and what doesn't work. Right now, I'm sitting with a laptop a camera, a mic, and a light that shines, right? And that's because a younger member said you need all of these things when you're putting together an effective town hall meeting, right? So the need for young people to be more engaged as well. There's going to be, this is what this pandemic has showed us.
That's great. So younger people have been really effective in helping you use these tools. And that background is awesome too, Donald, by the way. If they tell you that, that's way cool.
Yeah, I've learned everything during this.
All right, who else? Anybody else want to share how you're thinking about your organizations moving forward?
Sharon?
Sharon.
Thank you. I think what was really important for PEF is for us to look at this crisis as a motivational tool to help us change the overall structure of PEF. And what we've been doing is examining the crisis and looking at it in the beginning, middle, and final stages, and looking at it as temporary versus permanent changes.
Wow.
So looking at the issue, what is the issue? What did we do to address the issue? And what can we learn from addressing the issue? And that has been, to me, the big picture, because we have to examine our financial resources, and how did we use our financial resources? For instance, purchasing masks and paying for hotel rooms for our members, essential medical members to stay in. And then looking at our IT resources and how did we use our IT resources? How did we share, for instance, CDC information and the governor's executive orders and AFT information to all of the members in the union? How did we use those IT resources? And how did we use our organizational / structural resources, having Zoom meetings, having town hall meetings, and just having this whole global analysis of the union and what we need to do to help the union to move forward. And with me, as you know, one of my projects, my main project is trying to establish an emerging leaders committee, which hopefully will be approved next month. And I think it's so important because a lot of the baby boomers are retiring. So we need to bring in these new and young leaders to help this union to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to be doomed, because we're not going to have a contract anytime soon. So a lot of members are saying, I'm out the door, I'm leaving. So we need to really focus on the younger members.
That's great. So it sounds like your organization is taking very seriously, looking at what we've learned, what do we want to make long term, what are the changes we want to make. So that's awesome. Thank you. So let's take one more comment. Chevelle, I see Chevelle's hand up. Chevelle, you're
Hi. So I think after this pandemic, I think one of the things that my organization needs to do is actually show transparency and actually own up to those mistakes that we have made, and actually see the need for change. I know that everyone, it could be really, I guess, obvious to a lot of organizations, the need for change, but then I'm sure that there's some that are comfortable in operating in the way that they have been. And I feel like we haven't reached out to the membership in a way that will reach most of the membership. Yeah, we're out there on foot. Yeah, we're, you know, driving to locations, we're sending things in the mail, but we need to actually focus on, you know, online engagement and other things.
Right.
And actually give apologies where they're needed.
That's a great summary, Chevelle. I really appreciate that a lot in terms of just admitting where we made mistakes and learning from them and being willing to make change. So I'm gonna stop there just because we did promise you guys 2 hours. Although Sean, there is a big call for a baby coming right up to the screen. Everybody wants to see your baby. Where's that baby?
You know what? I just saw it just now. I'm gonna go get her in a second. Are we hanging up now?
No, you're gonna
so right before we hang up, I'll bring her back here.
Okay, bring her back over.
All right.
So I want to just close this session by saying, reminding you that there is there's the danger that you all have been dealing with in this crisis, but there's also opportunity. And it sounds like you all are moving into a place, hopefully, not all of you, but many of your organizations, where you really can begin to evaluate, sort of as Sharon was saying, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What's the long-term changes that this requires, right? And we hope that it's not just your organization, but as you know, we hope this demands big change in our economy and our society, and from things that we have learned from this crisis, right? About inequity and racial health disparities and all of the things that we're learning from this. And you all on this call and your organizations are just a huge part of making that happen, right? The long-term demands, both in your organizations and in our country as a whole. So what we wanted you to do today was really sort of think big about change and things that can happen in your organizations, but we also want you to now, over the next month, go back and think about your leadership projects that you were thinking about doing for this program. And do they need to change given this new reality? Is there anything about them that should be different now that you are in the middle of this crisis and trying to think about the future? So we want you to think about your leadership projects, apply lessons that you have learned, and decide should your leadership projects change in some way, or should you think of something new? So spend time between now and then doing that. I also just want to ask you to relax about your leadership projects. You've got a lot of time now. We're not sure when we will finally get to meet and complete this, but we'll talk about that on Friday, because you all know that we can't meet in July now. So you've got a little bit of time to think about this. So really reflect on the changes in the new reality as you think about your leadership projects. Our Zoom skills are getting much better, everybody. Thank you all. Even we're getting better. Thank you, Cherie, for doing a great job here today.
Thank you. I was a little nervous, but
we're not perfect yet, but we're going to keep working it. And I know Patricia is going to close us out and bring that baby over here before we close out.
Yes, Sean, please bring the baby.
All right, let me go grab it for a second. Hold on.
Patricia,
Vincent had a question.
Yes. Vinny has a question?
Actually, a comment, and I just wanted to mention, because this was a tough one, and Dan said, I don't know if you should mention it, but you know what? I made a comment in the chat. Sometimes leaders need to make tough decisions in this time, and you're criticized for it. And then I don't want to get too into it, but we were talking about how we should get into politics, and we were talking of the tension between our governor, our mayor, and the president, and how, it's challenging because right or wrong, like the person or not, in these times, you have to make decisions. And it's easy to look back and have hindsight 2020, and say, oh, well, that guy was wrong. He got it wrong. He got it right. So we're just grappling with the whole issue, especially let's take Cuomo, for instance, how to open up our state and how to get going.
Sean, she's going to be a rough one.
Those tough decisions on safety, and also how to get us back on track with the economy. This is something that we were just kind of trying to balance all of that. In any case, it's something we have to consider in our this transition back to normalcy, and just tough decisions need to be made sometimes. That's all I was wanting to share.
All right, I appreciate that, Vinny. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. That's a good segment into perhaps what we're going to be discussing later on in the week. On Friday, we're going to have a discussion about what an economic recovery looks like from a point of view of a worker and from a point of view of the business community. And that will give us a lens for how we approach this discussion of politics in our society. And so that's a good segment into Friday discussion. So I hope that you all had a sense of engaging in some deep thinking about what leadership means in this time, and thinking about how you use the skills that you have learned at ULI to help you through this process, and how to help each other through this process. So tomorrow we're gonna get back together again, and we're going to have a discussion on labor history, racism, and inequality. And so we continue, give you some materials for the discussion that we were setting up for Friday. Before we close, we want to just, for you to write one sentence about one takeaway that you have from this first meeting today. It could be about how you felt in the, using the technology and coming back together, or how you felt in the materials that you learned. So one sentence, and I'll read some of them out loud, so close.
Before you close, if I may, I just wanted to thank everybody for all of your support and your love. And I wanted to reach out to tell you guys that I've never in my life experienced anything such as this in a group situation where my heart has felt so warm and I felt so close to many like I do with you guys. And that goes for all of you guys. That's my love is. And also I want to just give a thanks too that I know Anisha reached out to Karen, and when I was in the hospital, nurses was coming from the emergency room, and I was able to get probably more special care than most people in there. So it just goes to show you the value in this family. So thank you, Karen, Onisha, for bringing it to our attention as well, and all of you guys for your well wishes. And I just love you guys so much. Thank you.
We love you too.
Thank you. One sentence, everybody's writing something, one takeaway from today. Please take a second to write a takeaway, and thank you, Robert, for sharing your takeaway about this group. Okay, maybe I'm not seeing anything come through. Are you writing? Unity. The chemist said he felt unity. Technology seems to be working to bring us together, so that's a positive. That's good that we're making use of technology. Inspiration, big smiles, positivity. We can all read it, so I don't want to read everything, but yes, we're making it work. Awesome. So we all could read. We all very grateful for all of you. I know for the faculty, we are grateful for the opportunity to be part of this community and to learn with you, and for you to let us to be our guinea pigs, to help us learn how to teach this work electronically and through technology, because we also learning. Yes, we're inspired by all that you're doing, how you have transformed your leadership, and how you are still serving the union in the middle of this pandemic. So we're inspired by that. Awesome. Yes, ULI 2020, the best to ever do it, because it's the first time we ever done it this way. So we are the best one to ever do it. And with that, I wanna keep our promise. It's 11:02. And I'm looking forward to our discussion tomorrow. And have a wonderful day, everyone. And we love you, and unity forever.